kind of look like you went earlier in the trunk. Yeah.
Seriously laid up.
Yeah, it looks like your front foot might be gone.
Both of you, I think it's the same thing with Derek. You got your front side and your trunk is leaking out so soon, and you're just not powering it out of the drive leg.
So,
yeah, that was a lot better.
Oh yeah.
Go back. I wasn't watching. I was looking through the camera. Your trunk is still getting out, but you had a lot more power through the drive leg there. That was good. Yeah, that was a lot better.
Keep us with that. My front leg, right? Still went too early.
Yeah, it's still.
Trunk was a little bit better on that one, though, right?
A little bit, yeah, but yeah, just gotta sit back more on that back leg. Try to shut that front one off, front leg off.
You want to film one?
Yeah. God, that sounds horrible.
Dude, I feel sick, dude. I've been out of it the past like 3 days.
I'm just rolling over.
Yeah. So you're not staying in your heel, you're not staying loaded in that back leg in the posterior chain. So when you lift up, you're swinging, you're kicking your front leg out and you're falling ipsilateral. Like everything wants to shift to your toes. So really focus on staying loaded in the heel and powering through to power that hip through.
Yeah, I think
sitting back in your posterior chain, keeping your trunk upright, and then powering hip rotation through the leg drive. You're just shifting to your toes and wanting the front leg to take over so quick.
I think I confused him because I told him to sit back, but then at the very end I want him to drive through, and you're gonna feel that at the very end through your toes.
Right. Well, I mean that's why it's so difficult, man. Is because you're sitting into flexion of the hip, and then you're powering into extension to get the hip to come through. That takes a lot of power. It's a difficult movement.
One more. You want to film it?
Yeah, sure. She's mad at you, bro.
Power that hip. Keep the trunk upright.
I don't know if that was any different.
Yeah.
Looks like your front foot was jumping. Oh yeah. There we go.
Well,
Do another.
would ankle weights help with this?
Yeah, good. I didn't bring mine. Are you gonna grind to that? Oh, yeah, let's stay home. You want to?
Maybe. I'll work on this first.
It's got to be twofold too, because your trunk is your separation. By the time you go into drive, your hips and your shoulders are going together. Like if we pulled out the biomechanics and put the suit on or put the sensors on, I guarantee you we would see hips and shoulders going together. It's not separating the two. So it's got to be both. It's got to be more power through the drive leg, more separation with the shoulders, more front leg stabilization, all of it.
over that one.
There's a focus, yeah. Yeah, that one's really heavy.
Yeah, that's better. Your hip extension tight and internal? Yep.
I feel like it's getting better though. Like, the more I do, the more it loosens up.
We're gonna, I think the rest of them will just be holding on to it until we get to the assisted band one. This is just those, right? It's not those. This is
Try to delay that trunk longer. Try to get that ball just cocked back farther. Like as you're driving, like I can see you're driving, but that hip is just, it's getting caught behind, and then when you're landing, it's just everything just wants to go together. So try to power the hip through and delay that trunk. Don't let everything go at the same time.
Okay.
Cock that arm back, power the hip through. A little better.
I'm just gonna do all 10 so we don't have to switch with these.
I think these are without them.
Oh,
right.
Oh,
These
yeah,
are regular
okay.
ankle weight on and
Oh, okay.
yeah.
If your arm's bothering you.
So whenever I'm like getting my hips here, I'm already right here.
Yeah, you're pushing, you're producing force, but it's just not transferring through the hips, and that's definitely just the mobility, dude. Like when you're landing, your hips look closed, so you're hitting front foot strike, your pelvis position is still closed, so that transfer of energy through the hips just isn't happening. So when that's not coming through and you're hitting front foot strike and your hips do start to come through, your shoulders just want to follow it. They're not separating. But a really good job with the front leg. Like you hit front leg, you land in flexion, you extend, your trunk comes over, you're doing really good with that. That's where your velocity's at. You're just leaking from the back leg, you're just leaking energy. It's just not getting through that hip. That hip is killing you.
So if my hips were good, instead of being like right.
Yeah, it would be like
throwing right here, I'd be throwing from back here.
right. That hip would be through, you'd be separated, there'd be torque through your core. Hit that lock up. So yeah, man, it's working on the hip extension range of motion. It's working on the internal rotation range of motion. Those are probably the two that are locking you up. And then it's just building the power through the posterior chain, building power through the glute. The glute is what's going to power that hip rotation. So if you can get that glute just super strong and you can build that range of motion, and then you build it with the motor control through the drills, then it all starts happening. But it's just going to take work.
Yeah.
You know.
What would you say for like something to do for hip extension? I know in internal.
The couch stretch, the banded hip extension. Have I showed you those ones?
Is that the one?
Like that's gonna be good. That's gonna be good for stretching it, but a lot of it is like stretching it is just a piece. Like then you have to build the posterior chain dominance to power the movement, and that's going to be like hip thrusters, you know, strengthening your posterior chain with deadlifts, getting really good at powering hip extension in the Olympic lifts, and then, you know, pairing it with the lateral movements like you're doing with these drills and stuff. So it's got to be a combination. It can't just be stretching. It's got to be hit it from every angle to start getting it to work.
So I should add
Stretch and strengthen, baby.
So I should add some hip thrusters and
Oh yeah, man. Single leg hip thrusters where you're powering that, you're focusing on that glute, powering it all the way to hip extension. That's going to be a good strengthening exercise for it.
oh yeah.
And then if it is an hip internal rotation issue, you got to start working to open that up as well. And that's a tricky range of motion to get to happen, because it just anatomically your hip structure might not be liking that.
Yeah, it doesn't like this
Right
here at all.
Right.
Like right there it feels pinchy, and then right here it feels like it's grinding.
Right. No, it's very common for guys to have those impingement issues. So a lot of the times too, your adductors can be extremely tight. That's biasing that hip into internal rotation. So it just starts, like you said, you feel that bone-on-bone contact. So stretching out your adductors and then strengthening your abductors. So doing those monster walks with the bands to get your abductors strong. That can be a big piece of it as well. So, like I said, man, it's just got to be all angles.
Aren't those?
No, it's when you take like a plate and you get the band and double loop it, and then you're stepping over the plate, like lateral banded walks, basically.
Oh.
Just to help.
Like
Yeah.
it's around here.
Right. You just want to strengthen the abductors, get those really strong, and then you have to stretch the adductors because those can be really tight, and that's just kind of hijacking the movement. So the idea is, if you're strengthening the abductors, strengthening the glutes, getting the adductors to loosen up, hopefully you can create some more range of motion and stability in the hip, so you don't feel that pinching sensation. That's tough, man, because like a lot of people would take you and do an MRI and go, oh, you know, this has damaged the hip, and you know, we've got some bone-on-bone contact. We're going to go in there and shave down the head to create more room for it. Like they would just operate with surgery. Like, dude, I've been watching like Buster Posey, Tim Lincecum, like on the Giants. Like like they both had to have surgery. Tim Lincecum had to have surgery on it. Buster Posey had to have surgery on it. But to me, that should be your last resort. Like do everything you can to rebuild integrity and movement in the joint before opting to go for the surgery.
Yeah.
I believe you can fix it that way. It's just a lot of work.
It's easy to get out my stuff now. I gotta write that down.
Back in your area or even on your team, do you have a trainer or something that you can work with on it? They should give you advice on how to work on it too.
No, most of it's on my own.
Yeah? That sucks. There's no local, like, good physical therapist or anything? Okay.
Not at school. At school, it's
Did you, like I said earlier, where you're kind of sitting back?
so stretch adductors or abductors.
Well, like I said, man, it's got to be comprehensive, like the whole thing. Like you should be stretching to get more external rotation. You should be stretching to get more internal rotation. You should be stretching your adductors.
Yeah.
You should be stretching into hip flexion. You should be stretching into hip extension. You need full range of motion of the joint. The pitching delivery on the back leg requires so much range of motion. So you have to be doing it all. But then you have to be, the main part of it is if you're feeling that pinching, what you can do is usually the adductors are brutally tight. So like when we did your numbers, were you tight like pretty much everywhere? Was it like internal, hip extension, abduction, right? Like everything was tight. When you go into abduction, do you still feel that pinching? Like when you spread your legs all the way out?
Kinda.
I mean, when you're laying on the ground. More of it is like when we do the test, we have you lay on the ground, you spread your legs, and sometimes people will feel like the cramping up.
Oh, right here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's brutal, yeah.
Yeah. So it's got to be everything, man. It's just getting that hip abduction to where the adductors are loosening up and then strengthening the abductors. Then you have to go into the hip extension, stretching the hip extension, and then strengthening the posterior chain, strengthening the glutes, strengthening the core. Core is huge for that, dude. when you have core strength and stability, it allows your distal segments to operate more freely. So it's really comprehensive. It's got to be every part of it. You're just working to move better.
Yeah.
It basically just comes down to good movement. So that's what I would do. I would stretch the adductors. I would strengthen the abductors. I would stretch my quads and hip extension, and then I would just work to build really strong glutes that are powering the hip extension.
So I gotta incorporate some deadlifts. I was actually doing deadlifts a while ago.
Well, deadlifts are good just for strengthening the posterior chain, but the hip thruster, like a single leg hip thruster, is more trying to build that posterior, that glute powering the hip extension, which is what you want.
Yeah.
Because that glute needs to be so strong, and you know, your core strength there, so that it feels that it has the strength, stability, and integrity to move where you want it to move. If it's the adductor super tight and the glute isn't functioning properly and that posterior chain doesn't feel strong and the core strength isn't there, your body's like an overprotective mother. It's going to try to limit that range of motion, because it's like, oh, you're going to hurt yourself if you're doing that. So you have to demand that range of motion in a healthy way and build strength, stability in those ranges. Doable, but work. Chad, what are we doing for Christmas, bro?
No, man, we need to do something now.
Let's eat just a bunch of food and hang out.
Okay.
Okay. Don't have to threaten me with a good time. Stud.